Welcome to everybody who's watching. On this episode of Positively Family Law, we will be talking to one of our amazing attorneys, Jolee Vacchi. How are you today?
I'm doing good. It's Friday and it's sunny out, so those are things to be happy about, I think.
We agree. The weather's been so nice this week,
It
too.
is. This weekend looks good, which is great because Memorial Day was kind of a washout, and we have Father's Day this weekend, so hopefully we can have a nice redo. So,
Yes, hopefully. All righty. So, to start off, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
okay, well, that's an open-ended question, but I am Jolee Vacchi, and I'm originally from Dartmouth, Massachusetts. That's where I went to school and spent most of my childhood. And I went to Stonehill College in Easton, Massachusetts. I met my husband, Chris, there. So I went to Stonehill. After that, we moved to Rhode Island. So we've been in Rhode Island for about 12 or 13 years now. I went to law school at Roger Williams University School of Law. It's Rhode Island's only law school. So that's where I went to study law. I had a great experience there and graduated. I took the bar in Massachusetts and Rhode Island because I didn't really know where I was going to end up. So I thought it'd be a good idea to do both of those. I ended up working at my alma mater law school at Roger Williams for a few years. And I was the assistant director of admissions there. So I really loved that job because I got to talk to students and people who are thinking of applying to law school, to tell them all about the law school experience and potential careers afterwards. And it involved a lot of travel around the country, which I thought was really fun and awesome before I settled down and had kids. So that was a lot of fun. Yeah, I got to see like different parts of the country I never thought I would before. I got to go to Alaska and Kansas and like all these random places. So that was a lot of fun, but I always did want to practice law and specifically family law. So I've been at O'Connor Family Law for the past few years doing exactly that, and I've loved it. It's been amazing. And so that brings us to today, I guess. And we're in Northern Rhode Island now. We live in North Smithfield, Rhode Island. I have two kiddos. Jillian, my daughter, is 7, and Flynn is 5. And very excited to have summer. I think most kids are right now.
Yes.
We have a cat, a dog. We just got 8 chickens, which has kind of been our new adventure lately. I don't know, it must have been a moment or something. My daughter's class hatched chicks this spring, and she asked if she could take some home, and I said yes. But
Coolest mom ever.
that's been a lot of fun. Well, I don't know if it's the coolest or what it is because I was the only parent in the class that said yes to the chicks. So
Definitely the coolest.
yeah, but so that's been a new adventure. I'm really new to farm animals and chickens, so I've been learning up a lot on that. And yeah, so that's a little bit about me, I guess.
Awesome. It's so cool how like you went from like helping future lawyers and like stuff like that getting into law school and now you are a lawyer and now you're helping people. That's awesome.
It's always my dream to practice law, to be a lawyer for a long time. And I really loved working at the school. But this little part of me was like this itch I couldn't scratch. It was like, this is what you're supposed to be doing the law. Like, so I really love that career. But I've known for a long time that this is what I was meant to do. And I had to take that leap. And I'm so glad that I did. It was really scary, but very much worth it.
Well, that's awesome. That actually leads me to my next question of like, why did you want to be a lawyer? So I guess we partially answered that in terms of, I guess, so a better question would be, why family law? Did you always want to be a family law attorney or was it just attorney?
So that's been a little bit of an evolution. So there's no lawyers in my family. Like I didn't grow up around anybody who I knew was an attorney. But from a very young age, I was always the kid that was like obsessed with Law and Order. And like, I don't even know if you remember this show, but it was called Ally McBeal. It's about this female attorney. And I just thought like that was what I wanted to do, was to be a lawyer and to be in court. And so that was always my goal. So when I got into high school, I was able to intern at a law firm, and I ended up working for an attorney who did family law. And I really admired her, and I thought she was great, and I really liked working on her cases and just seeing how meaningful of an impact she could have on people's lives as something as important as the foundation of your family, I just thought would be really meaningful work and something that I wanted to be a part of. So from that moment on, I knew family law was it for me. When I wrote my law school admissions essay, I wrote about being a family attorney. So I knew from like the get-go. So then when I was in law school, I kind of set up like all my experiences to be in family law. So I took all the family law classes and domestic violence. I became a certified mediator. I did all my internships with family attorneys. I worked for a great family law firm in Newport, Rhode Island throughout law school. So that's how I kind of went from yes, lawyer, and then yes, family law. And it's really funny because like family law, either you love it or you hate it. Like I have a lot of attorney friends, from law school, and there's so many of them that are like, I would never touch family law with a 10-foot pole. Like you must be crazy to do that. So it's either you love it or you hate it. And I love it. So.
Because we need people to love it, because unfortunately.
Yes, sure do.
But I actually hear that too, because I've worked in a corporate law and now I've worked in a family law, and like you're basically either one. Like it's either one extreme or the other. Like there's kind of you can't really be in the middle. And I've heard a lot of people who are like, I would never be a family law attorney. Like it's so crazy. It's too much. It's way too much. But
and it is. I mean, we'll probably talk more about this, but it is like emotionally draining. I mean, you are dealing with, people whose lives are in major transition and are dealing with really serious issues. And even as the attorney who, we're the objective ones and we're helping guide people through this process, you still have emotions and you feel empathy for people. So, your client's problems can be, you can take that on a little bit too much, and you're going to kind of have to figure out boundaries and everything. But at the end of the day, it's just, like I said, such meaningful work. It's so worth it. And like the stakes are so high, but that's what makes it so exciting too. So, yeah. And we're never bored in this job. You know that.
So true. Right when you think like you haven't heard anything, you something comes around and shocks you.
You surprise, and you always get thrown a curveball, and you're just like, well, that's what keeps it interesting.
Which is good, honestly. I mean, it's like if you have a boring job, like it would be so annoying. And like,
we're doing the same type of cases over and over, divorces and custody matters. Like every case has its own flavor, its own twist, its own nuances. And so it can go off in a completely different direction. So.
Absolutely. So what would you say is your, like the best thing about family law? What's your favorite part about your job?
Well, I've already talked about like how the stakes are really high. So these cases have real world impact. Like, what we do for our work makes a difference in our clients' lives. And one of my favorite parts of my job is just interacting with my clients. Like either if it's just a consult or if it's an initial strategy session and then we get hired on through the case. Like I just love meeting with the clients, getting to know them, getting to know their story, finding out what their goals are and how I can help them get there. So just meeting with my clients, interacting with them, even if it's on the phone or in emails, my clients, that's my favorite part of my job. Another kind of weird part of my job that I really like, and most attorneys probably wouldn't say this is, but I love writing. Like I was always like a kid who kept a diary and a journal growing up and, would write stories. And so I love to write. And so one of my favorite parts is writing like really detailed like motions and oppositions that include like a ton of detail. I take it very seriously and I love to like put forth my client's best argument. And I think that's really important too, because, a lot of decisions are made by judges from oral arguments in court, obviously. But a lot of times judges don't make snap decisions when you're standing in court. A lot of times the judge will say, I'm going to take the matter under advisement. And what that means is they're going to go on to the next case for right now. They're going to think about it for a little while, look at their notes from the hearing itself, but then they also review all the pleadings that were filed for the hearing. And if you have a really strong motion or opposition, I really feel like that can make or break which way the judge is going to rule. So I think it's really important to spend a lot of time and put a lot of detail into our pleadings. And so I really like doing that part. So yeah, those are a couple of my favorite parts of the job.
It's funny that you mentioned that because like we do hear that in terms of like, okay, the judge is going to take everything under consideration and then give your answer later. So you don't really think that like having, obviously having a good, strong oral argument is important, but being able to still make an impact on paper is a very, very important aspect of it. And so
said, the judge might take some notes and, they may be impacted by something, striking of what you say in court, but they're not going to remember everything. They hear a lot of cases throughout the day. So if they have those papers to go back and read and reflect on and be like, oh yeah. And I mean, you don't always get, you get very limited time in court. So you can't make all of your arguments, but you can include those things in the pleadings, which I think makes a big difference. And yeah, I always try to warn my clients that it's very possible and actually very likely that we're not going to get a decision that day because, a hearing will end and then your client will be like, well, what happened? You expect that you've made your case, you should have your answer. And a lot of times it doesn't work out that way. And you have to wait days or even sometimes weeks to get a decision in the mail. So I try to warn my clients ahead of time so they have that expectation and they're not just like, wait, what just went on? I'm confused.
that's like the worst thing is like not knowing and like waiting for that decision.
It's hard, and COVID's made it even tougher with waiting to get decisions. And yeah, patience is involved, that's for sure.
Especially in family law as a whole. What's your least favorite part of your job?
Well, I mean, everything has pros and cons. Family law, I like to say, is a inherently flawed system. It really is. And I say that because the decisions are made by judges, and judges are human, and they have different opinions, and they have wide discretion to make decisions based off of how they feel, and so you could go in front of one judge with the same set of facts and get one ruling, and then go in front of a different judge and get a completely different ruling. And that's hard because there's not a lot of consistency, in decisions that are coming out for the court. And so it's hard to make it, things aren't predictable, and when you're trying to advise clients and, and talk about different hypotheticals, it's hard. And a lot of times we get awful decisions that just don't make sense and can't be rationalized to us, but that's how it works out at the end of the day. You do the best you can. So I would say that's a really hard part. And a part I don't like about my job is like the lack of consistency and injustice that we do see in bad decisions and things like that. Another part that I don't like about my job is interacting with some opposing counsel is not really fun. I know that lawyers get a bad reputation and, that obviously comes from somewhere. But, my perspective of my job as an attorney is that, I'm obviously doing the best I can to put forth my client's case and represent them and meet their goals. And that's what the other attorney is doing for their client on the other side of the aisle. But, I feel like there's a civil way to do that. We are not the parties, and we shouldn't be, personally attacking each other and making this situation worse. I really try to cool the temperature because I feel like that really helps with negotiations. I mean, the majority of cases do not end up in trial. The majority of cases are, settlement negotiations that end by agreement. And so I can get really frustrated when I feel like opposing counsel are just making unreasonable arguments or, sticking at unreasonable positions that would never, be granted in court. Yeah. It just drags things out and makes things more expensive. So yeah, working with some other lawyers is on the lower end of things that I like about the job. But there's some great attorneys out there too that make this process so much better. So.
Yeah. And I definitely understand that because, like you said, I mean, you guys, it's not about you or the other person. It's about your clients. So there's no need for you guys to get into an argument or something like that.
Hey buddy, we're not getting divorced. Let's cool it. So it's let's try to work this out. It's okay. I get it. We're coming from two different places, but it's all right. Let's take it down a notch.
I understand that. That can definitely be a con. And, even outside of family law, just working with another side that like is taking things a little too far in terms of that.
And I also, a pet peeve of mine is like when another lawyer like enables their client's bad behavior. Like some things, especially when kids are involved, just shouldn't be happening, And if you have another lawyer who's, making excuses for that or, trying to justify it, it's like, look, we don't always have to try to say, to twist things and say why this is right. Like, let's just say this was wrong and it's not going to happen in the future. So that drives me batty too, because at the end of the day, the kids are really important in this case. And yes, we might have different ideas about what's in their best interest, but let's not do things that are actively, going to hurt them during this process. Because honestly, sometimes they're just innocent bystanders and collateral damage, and I don't want a part of that. So yeah, that's hard too sometimes.
I think you could make like an entire book on like pros and cons of being a lawyer.
Yeah, you could talk about this subject for a very long time. There's multi-level, it's very complex, but yeah, there's good and bad to every job. Obviously, there's no perfect job, but yeah, both the good outweighs the bad, that's for sure.
Good. And that's what matters. So good. Where do you see yourself in 10 years?
In 10 years, well, my mind automatically goes to, oh God, my kids are going to be teenagers, which I don't even want to think about right now. I'm like petrified of them getting cell phones and apps and like all that stuff. But yeah, but professionally, where I see myself in 10 years, definitely still practicing. I don't see any reason why I wouldn't be at O'Connor Family Law because I love it very much. So hopefully still at the firm. In terms of kind of like my practice and what I'm trying to do like with my cases, I really still am passionate about mediating. I became a certified mediator, like I said, in law school, and I really love the entire mediation process. I also recently became trained to be a collaboratively trained attorney, which is there's something called the collaborative divorce, which is kind of like mediation, but it has its own little flavor. Mm-hmm. But like I was just talking about, the majority of cases end in settlement agreements. And if you can, I see a puppy over there. A little puppy. But if you can avoid the expense and the time and the emotional component of a long drawn out, contested, litigious divorce or custody situation, I would pick that every time over the alternative. Obviously, this is not available to all cases. We have cases with domestic violence, or, if one party's main goal in a divorce is to punish and hurt the other, party and take them for all their worth and everything, that's not going to be situations where this is possible. But I think if two people can decide that they're going to try to do this civilly, that's amazing, especially where kids are involved, because when the divorce is over or when the custody matter's closed, you're still going to have to co-parent together for the rest of your life, not just until they're 18 or 21. You're co-parenting forever. Your kids get married and have their own kids, and this is a long-term, lifelong arrangement you're going to have. So if you can minimize that contentiousness and that acrimony, I love that, and I love being a part of that. So I would love to do more mediation and collaborative law cases. I do a lot of relocation cases, which is where one parent is looking to move out of Massachusetts. So it's usually different states where the parties are going to live. I really like those. So I've kind of like gotten a little specialty there, although I don't think we're allowed to say we're specialized in anything, but I have a lot of experience in that area. So I really like relocation cases. But yeah, I guess 10 years, who knows, but that's the idea anyway.
Yeah, well, that's cool. So a lot more mediation and collaborative law, hopefully in the future.
Yeah, just to kind of balance it out. I mean, when you have a full caseload and it's, mudslinging all day, very contested, like I said, it can really take a toll on you. So if it just kind of bringing more balance to my caseload with those ones that are very litigious, relocation cases are the most like contested cases that there can be. But then also having some of the mediated and collaborative law cases, that would be like my sweet spot, I think. So that's where I'm trying to get.
More amicable, more friendly, just easy.
still be like heated and have disagreements, you know, but at least the intention's there that like, yes, we are going to take control of the decisions of our life, you know, about our finances and our kids. We're not going to let a stranger, a judge, decide the most important aspects of our life for us. We're going to sit here and work it out until we're able, you know, and no one is ever going to get the perfect agreement. You know, that's not there. There's going to be things that you have to compromise on. Even if you went to court, no one gets a perfect agreement. But you know, what I tell my clients to do is make your list of like non-negotiable things, you know, and those you won't budge on, but everything else, you know, you have to be a little bit flexible on. So, yeah.
Right. Well, those seem like great goals. Obviously, you know, I agree with you in terms of like mediation and collaborative law being just such a I don't want to say nicer, but yeah, like a nicer approach to the scary aspect of divorce, because obviously divorce is not a nice thing. It's not something that everybody's like, yay, I'm getting divorced. Like, so having that balance and being able to utilize those other tools to, you know, really focus on what's important. And like you said, taking control of your life and your future and not letting some stranger on the podium decide everything for you.
Exactly. And like when you are in family court, you know, and it's a contested case, it's plaintiff versus defendant, you know, and if you have conflicting views, then most of the time what ends up happening is you need to throw all this mud on the other party and show why you should get what you want and not them, you know, and air all your dirty laundry, and it just gets like crazy. With mediation, you avoid all that, you know. It's not me versus you, it's us versus this problem that is us separating our lives, and we need to figure this out. So I just think the mindset and the approach is way preferable. Obviously not, like I said, available in all cases, but it's a great option that people should at least consider. And especially in the era of COVID that we've been in, I mean, family court is notorious for being, you know, not the most efficient place, and cases take a long time. And with COVID, that has made this even crazier. You know, the family courts kind of dug themselves a hole, and I don't know how they're going to get out, you know, with virtual court and everything. So a lot of people are turning to alternative dispute resolution like mediation and collaborative law, just because they don't want to have to wait, you know, 6 months to get a motion date. So it's been rising in popularity lately, and especially because of COVID, it's rising even more. Oh, sorry, a telemarketer's calling me. I'm gonna hang up on them.
So last question, and then I'll let you go for the day so you can go enjoy your chickens and your kids. What is the craziest thing that you've ever experienced as a family law attorney?
Oh gosh, that could be answered in a variety of ways. I think I'll answer it by talking about one of my craziest cases I've ever worked on. In this case, we represented a man who lived in Colorado, and he was divorced several years prior, or he thought he was divorced. He signed divorce papers and thought he was divorced. A few years later, he was living in Colorado. He's remarried to another wife, and he gets a letter in the mail from child support saying he owes child support for these two children, these twins that were born after he was divorced from his first wife. And so he does some research and he finds out that he and his first wife, the divorce was never finalized. So he technically was still married to his first wife, and now he has a second wife. And so basically he was very afraid of like violating polygamy laws because he had two spouses at the same time. And then he also had these two children that he was, you know, going to be financially responsible for that he knew were not his. So
Colorado, right?
They were on completely different sides of the country. It was not possible, not biologically, physically possible for him to be these twins' father. So he hired our firm to get the divorce finalized in Massachusetts. But we have to deal with this children's issue because you can't have a divorce. These children were born during the marriage because they were still married. And according to Massachusetts law, he's presumed to be the father. So we had to go through a bunch of hoops. We had to have mom have the real father sign a voluntary acknowledgement of paternity saying, I'm actually the dad, not her legal husband. So we were starting that process, and it turns out that the father she thought was the father was not the father. So there was a DNA test, and he was not the father, and she didn't know who the twins' father was. And so it kind of felt like we were on a little bit of a Maury episode.
I feel like I'm listening to an episode of Maury.
Yeah, and so there was no one else that she could identify that we could have tested to take a DNA test. So what ended up happening is we had to file a motion to have that voluntary acknowledgement of paternity waived. She and our client signed affidavits stating that it was not possible that he was the father. And we were able to get the divorce finalized, and he was deemed not to be the father of the children. It was a very long, expensive, complex process. But at the end of the day, he got divorced. He wasn't on the hook for the child support. But yeah, so that was definitely an interesting scenario.
That is definitely like, oh my God, that's literally stuff you only hear about in like movies or
I just imagining, I was like, what was his face like when he opened that letter? And like, what did his wife say? Like, oh my gosh.
Oh my God. On top of that, like now you have 2 kids that you didn't create. Like, what?
And you have 2 wives. Like, it was just crazy.
Oh my God. Well, I'm glad the outcome was really good on that case. So that's good.
It was a good outcome, but yeah, there was a roller coaster. But lots of twists and turns. So
Said it's never a boring day, so that's good. Crazy. Thank you so much for joining me today and letting our viewers and people who visit our website know a little bit more about you.
No problem. Thanks for having me, and thank you for watching.
Guys, and we'll see you next week on another episode of Positively Family Law. Enjoy the beautiful weather this weekend. And
Father's Day.
yes, and happy Father's Day to all the fathers and father figures out there. And we appreciate all of you so much. So thank you so much. Bye.
Bye.